Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock, and that's the time that was noticed and posted for an emergency board meeting of the Board of Supervisors pursuant to ARS 38-431.02B. Notice is hereby given that an emergency session of the Cochise County Board of Supervisors held on Wednesday, November the 2nd, 2022, 4 o'clock p.m. in the Board of Supervisors Executive Conference Room, Melody Lane, Building G, Bisbee. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion and possible action, and we begin with the roll call. District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2. Supervisor English is present. District 3.
Supervisor Judd is here.
We have a complete board. Members of the public may also attend this meeting by Microsoft Teams computer or mobile app, or by phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714. Conference ID 447-598-676 #. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. We have an item for discussion, and perhaps we should begin with a discussion or an explanation for the public about the reason for an emergency board meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the reason for the emergency meeting is that yesterday we were served formally with the lawsuit, and notice was given that a court date this Friday at 9 a.m. To appear, and also there's a response to the complaint that is due tomorrow at noon. So at this point in time, we need to obtain counsel, and based on those time frames, an emergency meeting was held.
Okay.
That's perfect.
All right, then the first item is for discussion. Discussion regarding the selection of outside legal representation in the matter of Arizona Alliance of Retired Americans, Inc. and Stephanie Stevenson versus Tom Crosby, Ann English, Peggy Judd, David Stevens, and Lisa Mara, all in their official capacities. And that's CV 202200518. So the discussion is how do we obtain legal advice? And I know that at the last meeting, I had in front of me a couple of people that Ms. Judd had sent down that she would prefer to have represented. And today, a few minutes ago, I got one, Mr. Maddox. It was sent to Mr. Maddox. So we have 3 possible candidates. And as indicated, before this meeting is over, we need to obtain legal advice. And we also need to be cognizant of the fact that the person has to be contacted. There has to be a letter of representation. And so anytime we're looking at hiring someone, we're going to have someone contact them and sign the papers for representation. So I just wanted to bring that up right up front so that the motion would not only be to hire a particular person, but allow the county administrator to contact that person and sign the letter. What is it called? Letter of
representation.
Letter
or an engagement letter.
Engagement letter. Okay. Ms. Judd, did you want to say anything about the 2 gentlemen that you have put in front of us?
Well, today I wanted to just actually recommend one of them. I've gone over the several things about each of them, and I feel more comfortable with Brian Blem, and that's the one that I'd like to put before the board today for a discussion.
Okay. Supervisor?
Yeah. I believe I've looked at these, Madam Judd, and I believe they're both fabulously qualified. There's no question about that in my mind. I have been a client of Mr. Lasota for several months, and he is willing to rely on private funding. That's what we have in this letter here. And if you had your email with you, I would send you this piece of paper, but I don't know if you do or not. But let me just read it to you. It says, I understand Cochise County may be looking for legal representation with regard to the AARP, and he really meant AARA lawsuit filed, challenging the planned hand count audit of certain ballots. My firm stands ready to assist if called upon. I understand there may be a provision that I rely on private funding to pay my legal fees, and that would be acceptable to me. He also said it would be acceptable to him to work with another party. Another lawyer, another legal
Madam Chair,
representative.
Yes.
I would just like to point out that Mr. Lasota has an active litigation right now against the Cochise County Board of Supervisors, and that would be a conflict of interest.
You said he'd drop it.
Well, currently, right now, he has an active litigation.
Okay, and then there's also the,
So just be advised of that.
Okay.
I don't know what the difference is between a minor conflict of interest versus a large conflict of interest. He thinks it's a minor conflict of interest, and he, in either case, he's willing to drop it to alleviate that potential conflict of interest.
Do you have any comments, Supervisor Judd?
It sounds good that he's willing to be funded by public or by private money. I do not know that about either one of mine that I presented, well, Brian Blim for in particular. However, I plan to pay my portion. I realize we're a board doing this as a group. I am seeking private funding to pay my portion of what we would owe this council. However that could be managed, I am willing to do that. So
I don't think
that's all I have for now.
I don't think that we need to worry about how it's going to be paid at this particular point in time, because I think the important thing is that that you have representation and that the person is notified, hired, so that you feel that when the papers are due tomorrow and the hearing is on Friday, that you will be represented. So I don't think the matter of private pay or public pay is important at this point.
I do.
I know that about the candidate that I've proposed. I know that he is prepared. His firm is behind him. They can get that information. That would be the letter of representation I believe we were talking about earlier. And he can be prepared for tomorrow and Friday morning. So I do know that. That's what I did search out. So, and his fee was reasonable. So.
And that was Mr. Blum, is that correct?
Yes, that was him.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything else that we need to discuss before we get a motion on the floor? I understand that we need to have a motion, and so we'll, if you're finished discussing it.
I'm not done discussing.
Okay.
Madam Judge, is Mr. Blum willing to work with another legal representative, for instance, in this case, Mr. Lasota?
He's aware. I did tell him he's aware that there are other people that are representing individuals in this case. For instance, the recorder has his own attorney.
I understand.
He's aware of that, and he didn't give me any indication that he wouldn't.
Okay. So we're going to assume that he is willing to work with Mr. Lasota. Okay. Then
Yes.
Then I would make a motion. I could make a motion right now.
Not really.
Okay, that's fine.
We're still in the discussion part. Now, asked if we were finished, and you said no, you were not.
That's right.
Okay, Ms. Judd, are you finished with the discussion? And remember, when you make a motion, it needs to contain the part about advising or authorizing the county administrator to contact whomever is selected and get the letter of authorization. Are you aware?
Watching. Yeah, I hope I don't have to make the motion.
I think I
My
can.
car. Okay.
In just a couple minutes, I think I can.
Okay. You guys work that out, and I'm listening to every word.
That's fine.
Well, I'm not sure that you two will believe this or not, but the county attorney again is recommending that Mr. Lasota cannot be hired because he's already in a lawsuit with the Cochise County Board of Supervisors. Is that not correct?
I'm advising that presently he has an ongoing litigation against the Board of Supervisors, so he is adverse to you. He cannot then represent you in another litigation. Supervisor Crosby has advised that he's going to drop the litigation. I don't know that. I have nothing in writing, nothing telling me. So as far as I know, he is still adverse to the Board of Supervisors, and you need to know about that because that's a conflict of interest.
I do know about it, and he is willing to do either, if it is a large conflict of interest, which cannot be resolved by any other way besides dropping the case, he will drop the case. If it is a small conflict of interest, and I don't know what the difference is, then he would take care of it accordingly. And I do know that because I've talked to him.
I can say right now it's a large conflict of interest.
Then he'll deal with it appropriately.
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I offer a suggestion?
Certainly.
That in the motion, that one attorney is chosen, and that attorney can choose whether to obtain co-counsel or what help he needs, just because with this short of time frame, that not only getting materials together and moving forward on something, but then trying to coordinate an effort and a response would probably cause additional burden, but that's a suggestion.
So the suggestion is for the board to nominate a particular lawyer and allow them to choose co-counsel if they wish, and authorize the county administrator to get the letter of engagement and sign that on behalf of the board.
Well, Madam Chair, I don't know what co-counsel is and how that's defined, so I can tell you how this is like a practice motion. It would read like this: direct Mr. Karwatska to engage outside legal representation of Mr. Blum and Mr. Lasota for the matter of Arizona Alliance of Retired Americans, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, but you have to remember that at this point in time, when you are making that motion, that Mr. Lasota is in conflict. And so if he were out of conflict, then you could certainly make that motion. I don't know how you can make that motion when he's in conflict. Now, if you wanted to solve that, you could say that we would choose Mr. Blum and he can choose to hire or authorize co-counsel if he wishes for this project.
I don't care to make that motion like that. I want to make it like I just told you.
Ms. Judd, are you willing to make the motion to hire the individual that you suggested?
She just has to second it. She said she doesn't want to make the motion because she doesn't have it down. So
Let's let her say that, okay?
I feel like I could make the motion. I do have a pen and paper, so now I need a few minutes, okay?
yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Shall we recess?
No, it's not that many minutes.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Certainly.
you could rephrase the motion to authorize Mr. Kravachka to engage Mr. Blum as counsel and Mr. Lasota if possible. And that would allow room to check out the conflict waiver, just a suggestion.
Did you hear that, Ms. Judd?
Yes. Thank you.
Because it may or may not be possible.
Is that
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I just emailed Mr. Lasota. Hopefully he'll get back to me.
Motion to authorize.
If you want to try it out with us first before you make the motion, that would be okay, Ms. Judd. if anything needs to be added.
Okay, so this is what I have. I make a motion. Well, no, it says, I'm not going to actually make the motion right now. So to authorize Mr. Karwachka to seek to engage in behalf of the board, sorry, I can't read my writing that well, Mr. Blum as legal counsel and Mr. Lasota as possible.
If possible.
If possible.
As possible is the word I used.
I think I
If
can make it
possible.
match what's in the writing better than that.
If possible would be, and you need to add to the, do you have sufficient authority on the motion so that you could call this individual and work out?
Yes. And I can sign just as additional information, sign an engagement letter that could be later ratified on our next board meeting on November 15th, so the public can be aware of.
Okay, do we need to add that to the motion?
I don't believe we do.
No, you do not.
Okay.
But I just wanted
Just for
to,
the information of the board, it can be ratified so that the public will be aware. Remember when we advertised the meeting today, we didn't have the names of lawyers there. So on behalf of the public, so that they know that we're doing things, in front of them, if they're not tuned in today, that it will be ratified at the next board meeting.
And I could make a practice motion. This is going to be a practice motion.
Okay.
Direct Mr. Karwachka to obtain outside legal representation of Mr. Blum and Mr. Lasota, if possible, for the matter of Arizona Alliance of Retired Americans, Inc. and Stephanie Stephenson versus Tom Crosby and English Peggy, Judd, David Stevens, and Lisa Mara, all in their official capacities, CV 202200518.
And I would just add, when you said direct Mr. Kravachka to engage, I'd add and execute any necessary documents. Like to sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that long motion. So I didn't second it.
Engage
though, not yet.
in complete necessary
And
documents.
I
execute
perhaps disagree.
any necessary documents.
I'm glad we could get together today because this really needs to be done quickly, because if you have a pending lawsuit, we need to have representation.
Want another practice run?
If
Or you just want to go for it?
I think you got it.
You
Okay.
don't have a practice run.
It says, this is my motion. Direct Mr. Karwachka to engage and execute any necessary documents to obtain outside legal representation of Mr. Blum and Mr. Lasota, if possible, for the matter of Arizona Alliance of Retired Americans, Inc. and Stephanie Stevenson versus Tom Crosby and English, Peggy Judd, David Stevens, and Lisa Mara, and all in their official capacities, CV 202200518.
Could I add, it's a little confusing in my mind that you have both names there, and it seems it would be better if you had the first name and you said as principal. And Mr. Lasota,
So
if possible.
I made the motion.
No, you haven't.
I did. I said I'm making the motion.
That was a practice, I remember.
Okay.
Do you have a problem adding that he's the principal?
Not necessarily, but I think I made the motion.
I didn't accept the motion. And you said it was a practice, and so it's a
Okay, that's
practice.
fine.
Madam Chair, this is Deputy.
It says if possible, which is, anyway, sorry.
But that assumes both of them instead of saying one of them is the principal and the other one if possible.
This is Deputy County Attorney Chris Carlson. Madam Chair, may I recommend, if that is your intent, rather than state as principal, use the language as co-counsel? Just because principal will relegate one attorney to being the lead on the case, and I get the impression that that is not Supervisor Crosby's intent.
I would let them work it out. Yeah.
Co-counsel would have let them work it out.
Okay.
And then where would you interject that right after the first person?
Certainly, so you are engaging.
Okay, how about this? Before I said Lesota if possible, and now I'll put Lesota as co-counsel.
If possible.
Okay.
That satisfies my comfort zone. Do you have any questions, Ms. Judd?
I do not.
Okay.
Let me see if there's a miraculous reply.
We're waiting with bated breath.
That's fine. Everybody good is busy. Do you ever notice that? Yeah.
All right.
This is it. This is it. This is the motion.
The motion.
The motion.
I'm ready for the
Direct
motion.
Mr. Karwachka to engage and execute any necessary documents, obtaining outside legal representation of Mr. Blum and Mr. Lesota as co-counsel if possible for the matter of Arizona Alliance of Retired Americans, Inc. and Stephanie Stevenson versus Tom Crosby, Ann English, Peggy Judd, David Stevenson, Lisa Mara, all in their official capacities, CV 2022000518.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, there is. Thank you so much. I hope that I'm someone known for giving credit where credit is due. So I consider it nothing less than miraculous that County Recorder Stevens has garnered tripartisan, yes, tripartisan support for the hand count. In my opinion, we have a community political unity opportunity at our doorstep, albeit
Madam
with
Chair, I
some
need to
kicking
Does
and
that have to
screaming.
do with the motion?
Yes, it does. It does, because this is another matter related there too. In my opinion, persons and entities against
Chair.
the opportunity for this community unity are really blowing it.
Madam Chair, I'm going to warn about open meeting violations because the agenda item is about obtaining counsel.
I
And that is
understand.
not what the statement is directed at.
And I asked and warned him, and he chose to continue.
Other matters related there too. I'm ready to vote.
Do you have any comments about the motion, Ms. Judd?
No, ma'am. I'm excited that we're going to get someone that I put forward, and I hope he does wonderful. I know he will. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and so ordered. I see no other agenda items, so I will remind you that our next meeting will be on Tuesday, November the 15th at 10 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors hearing room for a regular Board of Supervisors meeting. Having said that, meeting adjourned.